Welcome, everyone. We are here with our virtual conference, one of our sessions about collaboration. So we're really happy to show you what we have with that. One thing I do want to remind you of is if you could please, in your sketch, go ahead and hit that you're here so that it records where you're here, and that way you have access to the slide deck and all of the goodies that we have associated with the learning that we'll embark on today. So I will move it over to Dr. Judy Fusco.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I don't think we have anybody in an evening time zone, so that's good. I'm going to just quickly go through today's our agenda. We'll do a quick introduction of myself and Patti Ruiz. We'll go over our learning objectives. We'll do some introductions of you in chat. We're gonna, mostly focus on discussing collaboration, classroom norms, and resources, and then we'll do an exit reflection. And I want to call out and read this quote that's over on the right-hand side of my screen. Merely asking students to work together is not enough to, and I'm sorry, I have to make my screen bigger because I can't even read it, to lead to positive learning outcomes. So teachers must be intentional about identifying and facilitating effective collaboration. And this quote comes from Sarah Hampton, who is a former math and science teacher, and she's a current mathematics coach. I work with her a great deal. You'll hear me talk about her a little bit more. We can go on to the next slide. So I am Judy Fusco. I am the Director of Emerging Technologies and Learning Sciences at Digital Promise. I've been working with practitioners very closely my whole career, and it started in the late 90s. I love getting into a classroom and working side by side. And my whole career, I've been very painfully aware of the gap between research and practice. And I've been working to try to help bring us a little closer together. So you'll see on our slide here, our work is informed by a great many educators, and we have a couple of links here. I think Sherry will drop them into chat for us. Educator Circles is our current project. We were Circle Educators, and now we're Educator Circles. It's two different projects focused on emerging technologies. One is no longer and one is current, but the materials that we created under Circle Educators is still very relevant, very important. So I'm giving you both links. There are a lot of blogs there. A lot of the blogs were written by practitioners or practitioner and researcher teams together. We always have a review process where we're including both voices and perspectives. And at the end, well, I'll tell you now, there's a link on Educator Circles. If you like what we're saying today and you're interested in talking with us more, sign up over there and we can keep in touch and we can keep you informed of the work we're doing. Sarah Hampton, as I read her quote before, is one of our educators. I'm going to pass this microphone over to Patti so she can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patti Ruiz. I am a former Spanish teacher and computer science teacher. I also worked as an instructional coach. I am now a research scientist at Digital Promise, focusing on learning sciences and emerging technologies, and I'm excited to be with you all today. If we could move on to the next slide, we just wanted to share our objectives for today. We want to talk about the difference between collaboration and cooperation and make sure that you all remember and know the differences between the two. And this is a big task, but we hope to start this today to be able to apply your understanding of collaboration in your classroom. So learning how to create conditions for collaboration, about what kinds of tasks lend themselves to collaboration, which tasks might not, and also how to structure groups of learners around collaborative tasks. And then to be able to identify and see if collaboration is occurring and what is happening in those learning environments and spaces. So I'll turn it back over to Judy for the next slide.
So we started at the beginning. Sherry asked you to tell us where you're coming from today. So I would love to know a little bit more about you. I wish we had time to go around and do introductions because I would love to hear from each and every one of you. We're going to try to make this session that's fairly brief, as interactive as possible. So we're going to use chat a lot. I will read chat when I am not presenting. Bhatti will read chat when I am presenting, and Sherry will, of course, have her eye on it as well. And we'll try to get to all of your questions and comments. But I would love to know a little bit more about you, your classroom, your role in the school, an indicator that you use to tell if collaboration seems to be occurring in your classroom, or anything else relevant to share in this session. And I'm going to pause for just a minute here and stop talking so you can type for a moment, and then we'll go on to the next slide. I'll let a couple more chats come in and then I'll go on. Give you a moment to finish your typing. And thank you for sharing so far.
I really like what I'm seeing Kim bring up as far as the student roles, to make sure that there's equity of the workload, and so that, you know, one person isn't doing everything. I really think that's important for the students to be able to negotiate and learn how to do. That's awesome. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, thank you. This is really, it's fun to see who you are and what you're thinking about. Respectful noise level, full of student voices. Love it. We'll go on to the next slide. Keep typing, make this interactive. It's a lot more fun for all of us, I think, when we're not just listening to just me talk. So the next slide, what is collaboration? I love thinking about collaboration. I love thinking about learning, and I love thinking about collaboration and how we can deepen learning through collaboration. So it's kind of funny that my first word on here is cooperation. Cooperation and collaboration are different things. And cooperation is really about getting a job done. Students often divide tasks when they're cooperating, and they break it up. And cooperation could lead to a collaborative activity. It could be part of a collaborative activity, but it's not the mental effort that collaboration is. And I'm going to go into now what collaboration is. Collaboration is really about making that mutual effort to work together in a shared mental space to build understanding together and connect for conceptual change. That's really how I think about collaboration. And because collaboration and cooperation are different, we can't expect the same kind of results from the different kinds of activities. And I think sometimes people do conflate the two and then expect results that you would want to happen in a collaborative activity and a cooperative activity. So that's what I wanted to spend some time breaking down and thinking through today. So this is our learning objective number one, is to think through this difference. We're going to spend more time on it. And I think Sherry put the link into the chat. It's an article by Sarah Hampton. I'm going to talk about two of her articles today for educator circles or circle educators. And she unpacks collaboration. So feel free to type into chat if you have any questions on the difference. And I know, cooperative and collaborative go hand in hand in a classroom. And in practice, it's not important to necessarily label what you're doing. It goes too fast. It's crazy. I know, been there. Love being there. But I think it's really important when we have a moment to reflect, to really think about the difference and what we might expect when we're doing the different kinds of activities. I think that, I think we're getting some of these ideas in the chat. And we can go on
I
to
love it, Judy, about that whole idea of cooperation versus collaboration. I think that's so important that people do conflate like you were talking about, and then that idea of collaboration being co-laboring, like you have skin in the game, you have to do something together. And I think that connects to that the SEL session we had earlier, the emotional intelligence it takes on the part of the student to be able to do that.
Very much so. Let's keep going, because we're gonna get to some of that as well. So next slide. So I think this is for Patti.
Yes, thank you. We wanted to talk a little bit about examples of what might be happening in your classroom when collaboration is happening. As you read these, if you have an example of how you're implementing collaboration in your classroom, please go ahead and share those in the chat. I really enjoyed seeing what you were sharing earlier, and especially the talk about student voice, and Abby said accountable and respectful conversation. I really appreciated that. And again, as Sherry mentioned and highlighted what Judy was saying, collaboration is really that sharing of the space. Collaboration is about making that mutual effort, as Judy said, to work together in a shared mental space. When I was in graduate school, that idea of the shared mental space was really difficult for me at the beginning. And then when I got it, I got it. And what helped me understand this is dividing an activity up for students so that this person's the note taker and this person will be sharing out the responses, or where you have two separate tasks. That wasn't a very good example, but where one person is doing problems 1 through 3 and the other one is doing the rest of the problems. That's cooperation, right? Collaboration is when they're both or all of them are working on problem number 1 and talking it through and kind of sharing that mental space. So that's something that helped me understand that shared mental space. But some things that students might be doing in the classroom are project-based learning, problem-based learning, collaborative inquiry in science, collaborative discussion, again, in pairs or in small groups, collaborative argumentation, writing, and then games, where they're supporting one another. In computer science, we used to teach one was the navigator and one was actually doing the controlling of the computer. So one person would tell the person controlling the computer what to do. So that arguably could or could not be an example of collaboration, depending on how those two students are working. So again, this is not an exhaustive list, but remember that collaboration requires that shared mental space and students building understanding together. So their learning is enhanced by working with someone else. So I'm going to take a look at the chat and maybe we can turn it over to the next slide so that you all can take a look at your collaboration journey as a teacher, as an educator. Where do you fall on this spectrum? And again, it's a spectrum and it's a non-evaluative spectrum. You can self-assess. You don't need to share that with us. One is not better than the other. And as we all know, as educators, we require being in different places at different times, depending on your classroom and depending on your students' needs. So A is I rarely have my students work together, all the way up to D, where I help others learn about collaborative work. And we all might be in different places on this spectrum. again, it's a spectrum, and each situation, as you education professionals know, require different points along the way of this collaborative journey. So I'll give you a little bit of time to think about where you might be. And I'm enjoying reading these comments in chat. So I'll pause there for a minute.
And if let's say you aren't actually working directly with students, but you are coaching, you can talk about what you mainly see when you're looking at into classrooms. Which one of these, A, B, C, or D, do you really see a lot?
Yeah, and if you want to share why, I love that we're seeing some D's there. That's really great. As Sherry mentioned, many of you are coaches, so that makes sense. But if there are any examples, or if you have any questions that have come up so far, please feel free to share those with us. And I'm going to turn it over to Judy whenever you're ready.
Yeah, no, I'm really curious about the C and the D and the B and the D, how that relates, and maybe people can add on in chat, but don't feel pressured. If you can share, great, and if you need to listen, understand too. We can go to the next slide, Sherry. We are going to get into the collaboration zone today. And when to collaborate, we're going to talk about collaboration as a norm, group size and makeup, the magic of collaboration, and assessing collaboration. So I'm going to take us on into the next slide. This was just the intro into our zone. Are you all feeling the move into the zone? So the first question is when to collaborate. And the simple answer is on complex tasks. When it's an easy task, when a task does not require the mental power of two heads, it's really kind of useless to collaborate because it takes more coordination necessary to do the task if you're trying to collaborate on a simple task than it does to just do the task. And people get frustrated when they're asked to do something that seems silly. So if it's a complex task and you actually need two heads to accomplish it, you're going to want to spend that time coordinating and thinking through and thinking with the other person and getting on that same mental page. And how do you decide? Well, the cognitive demand that goes into it. And cognitive demand, if you haven't thought about it, it might be a little bit different, but Patti gave us a great example of, people dividing a task. And in a low cognitive demand task, such as simply recalling some information, or getting a worksheet and having to fill out definitions. And I put my students in partners and I said, hey, do this together. And they looked at each other and said, hey, you do the first 6, I'll do the second 6. We'll be done faster, then we can goof off. That's what's going to happen in the low cognitive demand task. So once I ratchet up the cognitive demand, I might say, okay, we have this topic. We've been studying it for a while. Now I'm giving you a text. And the text may contain some inaccuracies, and it may contain some really great important things that are relevant for the concept. I want you to work with your partner to go through this text and think through what makes sense, what is right, what is not right, and how you might put this into a new presentation, maybe for your grandma. Maybe for somebody who doesn't know anything about this. Maybe I've got 5th graders and I'm going to ask them to make a presentation for kindergartners. All of a sudden, the task demand is a lot higher. And I kind of want a partner to think through these ideas with, because it's a hard task. Does that make sense? The high versus low cognitive demand. I'm not going to want to coordinate when it's easy. I'm going to want to divide it up and get it done more quickly. When it's hard and I want to think through it and I need to think through it, it's going to also then give a chance to really deepen the learning. There is another article on one of our blogs about when to collaborate, and it goes through this in a lot more detail. So feel free to check that out. Sherry will put that in. And I think somebody asked earlier, the slides will be available or are available on the published area. And you can come back to them whenever you want. But I'm going to move us on. I guess I'm going to ask really quickly, thumbs up, thumbs down, complex task makes sense, cognitive demand makes sense. Are we good? I got a one. I can only see like 5 people. Okay. We'll move on to collaboration as a norm. So it takes time to collaborate. It takes time to figure out how it all works. And without norms, you have to think through it each time. Once you have some norms that you're bringing into your classroom, they can be understood, they can be internalized. So challenges to collaboration. Students don't naturally know how to collaborate, and we have to help them. Another challenge is a lot of students have experienced bad collaborative projects and gotten dinged on their grades because their group wasn't so good. So I hear that from students all the time, that they really dislike working with other people because people aren't always doing what they need to be doing for the project. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to grading. That's a little bit later on. And different schools have different cultural norms. Different kids have different cultural and collaborative norms. And that's okay. And, taking time to talk through these things, we will talk through some collaboration norms that you could share in classrooms and discuss. But, okay, so we'll talk through that. And then the strategies. So we're going to talk through how we might create these norms around collaboration and then help to build the trust among students to work together. It takes a lot of trust when you're collaborating because you're going to be vulnerable. And you're going to need to have this foundation of trust in your classroom. So I'm going to tell you 2 quick stories about collaboration. A few years back, I went into a teacher's classroom and we were doing a cooperative and collaborative project in there. And I was going to help her get things going for this. And I didn't know that she had already established collaboration as a norm in her classroom. So the teacher read off who was in which group. We explained the tasks, and the kids just got up and started gathering what they needed and going to their space and working. These were 3rd graders. I couldn't believe it. It was beautiful. I was expecting we would be in that space in a session or 2. We were there within 10 minutes. It was amazing. Then on the flip side, when a teacher doesn't use collaboration and it's not normal for their classroom, when they try, there's often a lot of chaos and it doesn't seem to work. And I had a fabulous friend, teacher friend, who was going to try a new collaborative activity in his high school English class. He designed it. We went over the design. It was a really good design. He went off and tried it, and he came back and he was crestfallen because it didn't work, he said. So we dove into what happened. We took it apart, and it sounded to me like the kids were trying to learn how to collaborate. And I asked him, do you have time to go back and try something similar again with your students? And he said, yeah, he could do that. And he was still a little leery. He tried it, and he came back and he was all smiles. And he said, it worked so much better. And he could see then why it took time and why it was necessary to make this investment. So I think that, when you're coaching someone, helping them understand, you probably have your own stories about when it, the painful beginning of collaboration, and then when it starts to work, what you experience. So I love thinking about that with people. I'm going to move us on to the next slide.
So in a past session, teachers have found rubrics helpful. So we want to share these rubrics. If we had more time, want to give you time to work with these in breakout groups, but we don't. So Sherry's going to be sharing these rubrics, and they call out things that individual students should do to contribute to the collaborative process. They're broken up by grade level, and they focus on specific aspects of individual contributions to collaboration. The indicators are designed to be simple and accessible for students to do peer evaluation, as well as instructive to guide group conversations. So you might find these helpful, and you might want to share these with educators. But yeah, those are the links. You can take a minute or two to take a look at the rubrics, and let us know if you find them interesting or you might use them. We'll take a little pause now so that you can take a look.
And I think I love these rubrics because it gets to what Letta was saying about people needing to know what it looks like. So I really appreciate the rubrics for that.
Yeah, and again, collaboration is about groups working together, right? Or pairs working together. But these indicators calling out those individual elements, I think, are also important. So we know as educators what to look for when students are engaging in collaboration.
I was just gonna add in one of the things that I see in the rubrics as being helpful is if I'm teaching younger kids, it's great to have, what might be expected of them. And then it's nice to look ahead, even if I'm teaching younger kids, to see where it's going and what might be expected of people who are a little older or in high school, quite a bit older. And vice versa. It's nice to, when you're teaching older kids, to look back and remember what they did in the beginning of learning to collaborate, if they had the opportunity to collaborate at a younger age. When I'm starting to learn to collaborate, even if I'm older, I might need to start more basically. So I think that the rubrics could potentially help you think through the whole process, or help another teacher think through the whole process of going through learning to collaborate.
And I really love that story that you told, Judy, because I think going back to what Carolyn was talking about in the chat, how she's coaching teachers to add more in the work that she does, to add more collaboration. I think really having people understand the why and have that purpose behind how this can actually help. Because a lot of times, Rome wasn't built in a day. Collaboration takes a while to build, but you have that natural arc and flow of a school year. At the beginning, everyone's in love, and then, before Christmas, everyone is trying to see how far they can go. But then once you get to January, you're kind of in flow. So with collaboration, once you've kind of worked through that and they've learned how to behave with each other, it makes it to where the people who are using more collaboration, their classrooms are flowing more. The students aren't asking them for as many things. They're able to negotiate those things between themselves. And the learning is really just happening on a deeper level. So I think that's pretty cool.
Okay, I'm going to take us on to the next slide because we are reaching the 15-minute till mark. I am noting that. Group size. We could spend a lot of time talking about group size. I know that's something I think about a lot. And remember, what I always think about with grouping is that groups should be designed to help people make connections to their learning. They're going to be making connections to each other and to their learning. The discussions in the group is what allows this to occur. And again, I will say groups need to have trust among their members. So for group size, what's the right size of a group? If you have an opinion, I'd love to see it in chat. Everybody will have a different opinion, I'm guessing. And what I like to do is think about the group size in relationship to the task that I'm having my students do and the purpose of the task. So for brainstorming, I might want a slightly larger group because I want to get a lot of ideas and some energy going. For digging into a concept, I might want a smaller group. For giving and getting feedback, it's kind of easy to do it in pairs. Sometimes it's harder. You can do a round robin in a larger group, but these are all things to think about. And I'll just say, personally, we've got, it depends on the activity. Absolutely. So I myself tend to default to smaller sized groups, but it really is, what you can do, what you can support, what makes sense to you, and the activity. Absolutely, Beverly. I saw absolutely Beverly flash across my screen and I said the word absolutely. Okay, so feel free to keep, discussing group size. I'm going to keep us going to the next slide. So
Yeah, I have the next slide up, but I did see that Beverly wanted to share something. Is that okay, Judy?
Sure.
Well, I just wanted to share that I observed a teacher this morning, and she's very good with the grouping of her students. And she did in all of about 10 seconds a count off of 1 to 4. And those 4 that she really needed to speak to, help, assist more, they ended up right in the same group. So I said that spoke volumes for her ability to first have them arranged in the class, and then for the count off to end up in the group where she needed them to be to help them with that additional assistance.
That is amazing. I got chills when you told that story. So thank you. Yeah, that teacher has obviously collaborated with her group and has those norms, and then also in her own head has a lot of extra understanding of what needs to happen. So yeah, and it can happen. It happens. It does take an investment, but it can happen. I love that. Okay, so then the next thing about group makeup, when you're creating groups, you absolutely have to consider power dynamics and discuss those in your classroom. And determining how to make groups less fraught with power structure issues. Type in chat if you have suggestions for this. Some of our readings suggest that we look at same gender or race or culture groups. Some suggest having groups that are not weighted heavily in any one characteristic and having more equal numbers. But you know your students, you know your situation, you know what conversations you've had with your students, and thinking about all of this is absolutely important for group makeup. Roles can also help with power issues in the group. So if you have a kid who maybe talks all the time, but you assign them the role to be a recorder, maybe other kids will get a chance to talk because the dominant kid for talking is now tasked with something specific. So you can think about these things to try to help foster everyone getting a chance to do different things, and your students well. So I think reassuring teachers who are new to the collaborative process that they can do these things, and they need to just they can pick one thing to start with and then keep going. And I love what I'm seeing in the chat, and I'm a little distracted by it, but I'm going to keep this going so that we can make it through. This is so much fun. So our next slide, one more thing about group makeup: timelines, deadlines. If you have students working together on a product and they have a different sense of urgency and deadlines, it may drive each other crazy. They may drive each other crazy. So if somebody works up to the last minute and likes that, somebody who wants to get things done ahead of time will not be happy with them. And this is one of the things I heard the most complaints about in my groupings of students. So, there's a suggestion to let the group talk about it and make internal deadlines that then help make things not wait till the end. So that's the one suggestion there. I don't know if you all have had encountered that issue before, but I find, I tend to teach older kids or adults, and this has been a big thing in my experience. Okay, so we'll move on to the magic of collaboration, because I do want to go back to the idea that collaboration is about connecting for conceptual change. And I saw a lot of you nodding and thinking and talking about it in chat. So it's not a new idea for at least some of you. And I think that I mentioned that how we know things are happening is through the discussion that's occurring within a group. So I really like to listen, walk around and listen to my groups. And you'll start to see and hear things that really reflect these conceptual changes occurring in heads. And then on this slide, we get a special treat. I have a rubric linked in from our lovely moderator, Sherry Lofton. And I'll just say, it's really great that, and she probably will drop the chat in. Yeah, I think she dropped the chat in for you, the link into chat for you too. I'll say it's really great to see these are aligned to the Common Core ELA standards. And I'm going to give Sherry a minute to say anything that she wants to about her rubric.
Yeah, it just going back to what Wilmetta was saying about the seeing what it looks like. These are based off of actual behaviors that I noticed my students doing. So saying something like, if they're in a group conversation, saying something that someone else just said to people ago, as if it was the first time it's ever come up in the conversation, not giving homage to who came up with that idea first and being able to build on that. As far as students who are more extroverted in nature, who need to speak to process, them being able to realize we want you here and we don't want to stomp out that spark, but knowing maybe to not speak as a form of participation. So having students have that self-awareness, am I more introverted? Am I extroverted? If I'm more extroverted, my way is that I can invite one of my more introverted classmates to speak. And then what's really cool is that they're able to make those goals and kind of keep track of how many times they're participating and inviting other people in so that they can keep track of how they're going on this rubric. So that's one thing that we really appreciated.
Thanks. Yeah, and I really like how clear it is for classroom use. As I looked at it, I was thinking it probably could be adapted pretty easily for 4th through 8th graders, depending on the standards, and doing a little, thinking. Rows 1 and 2 really show the indicators. Row 5 gives good tips for students to think about as they are listening. And row 3 is more about the individual, important, and is important for collaboration and presentations, all presentations. Row 4 is about preparation, which is also important for everything. I'm going to move us on, and I hope you'll come back to Sherry's rubric. I'm going to move us on to the next slide. Magic and maintenance. So all the while a group collaborates, that's the magic part, it also needs to work on working together or maintaining the group. In the research literature, as you know, I'm a researcher, but I like to narrow the gap. It's called social regulation of learning. And I linked in a blog post, or it's actually a primer, it's not a blog post, a primer written by a researcher. And one of the things that I would love to have come out of this is if somebody said, this is good, but it's not ready for teachers. And they said, I would be happy to work with you and think with you and write something that would make this more accessible. So I think that the social regulation piece is super important, and I haven't seen it addressed enough. So maintenance isn't conceptual change, but it's imperative, and it's necessary to really create and maintain that safe space necessary. So I'm going to move us on to assessing. So how to grade Oh my gosh, this could take hours to discuss through. So I'm just gonna, tell you what I like to think about, and it's a starting point. And we can, hopefully continue the conversation. And again, this would also be another topic that I would love to have educators to work with, to think through with this. Group project grade versus individual grade and having collaborative components. I don't like to give group project grades. I like individual grades. I like to really think about the student perspective of I do all the work and they get all the credit when I've done all the work in the group. So I go with the individual. I wish we had more time to go through this and think through this together. And if you have thoughts that you want to add to chat, please do so. The rubrics that we gave you can help you think about assessing and think about setting expectations and holding students accountable for mastery or growth, and not put contingencies on the individual students on other students so that an individual gets a grade for the work they do. So there's a lot here that we are not getting to, but I hope it's going to spark some conversations coming up. Next slide.
So the next slide is about productive collaboration norms that you and your students may want to discuss. This list, by all means, is not exhaustive and should be modified for students at different grade levels. But it's a start. You might have your own collaboration norms that you'd want to share. I'm not going to read these because I know we're crunched for time, and you do have access to this slide deck. And the next slide has resources that we also wanted to share with you about collaboration. And these are links that we have found to be helpful, that educators and coaches have found helpful in the past. So please take a look at these when you have a moment. Thank you, Sherry, for sharing the slide deck. We would love to chat with you all about these topics. So if at any point you want to reach out to Judy or to me, please feel free to do so. We do have kind of an exit reflection for you on this last slide. We hope you were able to think deeply about the difference between collaboration and cooperation. Thank you for all of you who shared in the chat. We enjoy hearing from you and learning from you as well. And if you have a closing reflection that you would like to share with the group, please do so now. We look forward to reading them. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. Please, as I said before, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you to everyone who attended. Sherry, thank you for popping the prompt in chat. Let us know what you learned today, what you're going to take back to your classroom, to your school, to your context.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
good. I'm glad someone found the rubrics helpful. Good.
Oh,
Thanks,
great.
Brittany, for sharing that.
Yeah.
Oh, Megan, hey. Okay.
And please
Well,
do reach out to us if you're interested in thinking with these topics with educator circles. There are stipend opportunities for you there. And if you have any time over the summer or anything, and I know Sherry wants to say something, so I'll stop talking now.
oh no, that was all needed and really important. So we appreciate you. Thank you, Dr. Fusco. Thank you, Dr. Ruiz. For everyone here, if you could please go ahead and give us feedback in your sketch. And if you really liked it, please go ahead and let us know. If you didn't, well, just go ahead and skip that portion. I'm just kidding. But I'm so happy that you all were here with us today. Here are we have our Ed Camp coming up next, so stay tuned for that. That is really fun. This is based on in-demand topics from educators across the country. So come on back for our Ed Camp. And we want to make sure that we thank you for all of the presence and how present you were in the chat today. So thank you for allowing us to learn from you as well. So thank you, everyone.